how did Emperor Constantine impact Christianity? So although it's hard to tell what impact Constantine left, we can definitely conclude that Constantine dramatically transformed the church in complex and often contradictory ways. So we can see that in three ways. So first, Constantine created a syncretistic society that both corrupted the church but made it capable of reaching new limits. And then secondly, Constantine instituted financial policies that brought non-Christian leaders into positions of leadership, but his financial policies also strengthened the church's ability to serve. And then the third thing that Constantine did was he stomped out heresy through centralization of power. So firstly, these are all out of order. So Constantine made a syncretistic society. So basically, syncretistic means like merging. So Constantine basically merged Christian and Roman culture together. In 1313, Constantine was converted, quote unquote, to Christianity, but he never left his pagan and Roman ideals behind. He still maintained the title Pontifex Maximus, and his actions, like murdering his wife and his son, those kind of things show that his conversion may have been a political move and not very genuine. But nonetheless, his conversion created a syncretistic society. And Paul Johnson poses a really interesting question. He says, did the empire surrender to Christianity, or did Christianity give itself to the empire? So this question is kind of interesting to think about, because in this syncretistic relationship between Roman and Christian culture, it's interesting to think about if Christianity or the empire was the one that gave way to the other. So, some examples of this syncretistic society was that, so one example of this syncretistic society was the Sabbath being held on Sunday. So Constantine stated, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the people rest and let the workshops be closed." So notice he doesn't mention God, he doesn't mention Christians. He's saying let the venerable, on the day of the sun, let's worship the sun. I don't know. But anyway, he moved the Sabbath day to Sunday, which had something to do with his affiliation with the cult of the sun god. And also another example of this syncretistic society he built was the Arch of Constantine. So basically Constantine made this it was kind of a dope arch. It was like all these historic pieces or bricks or whatever from other monuments put into one monument, and deities were worshipped in this monument, but God was never mentioned in it, which is interesting. So yeah, that's my first point, is that he created this syncretistic society, and he brought a lot of the Roman ideas into Christianity and its worship. And then the second thing he did was He instigated these financial policies, and he made the church tax exempt. And this did a multitude of things to the church. Some were positive, some were negative. So the negative way that his financial policies impacted the church was that many people seeking financial gain were enticed to become leaders in the church, because since it was tax exempt, there was government money from Constantine pouring into the church. People said, hey, this is a great way to get some money. And so the leaders weren't all that pious, and that led to some corruption in the church, because as you can imagine, not a lot of good comes from a lot of money. But the tax exempt status also led to expansion in the church, and more churches were built because of its tax exempt status. One part of the tax exemption was the architectural change it brought. So during the early church, people would worship in a patron's house, and Everett Ferguson says that the early church was dependent on patrons who owned large houses. Before Emperor Constantine recognized Christianity as legal in 1313, corporate ownership of property by the church could be legally ambiguous. So basically, Everett Ferguson is telling us, like, there was some positive things that came from tax exempt status. There was no longer this legal ambiguity. And the third thing Constantine did was he stomped out heretical branches of the church. So he did this through centralizing the power of the Catholic Church, kind of. And he took a harsh stand against groups like the Donatists and the Arians, and abolished their houses of worship, and gave them really harsh punishments, which discouraged them from being a religious group. So Sozomen, I don't know how to say this guy's name, but anyway, Sozomen says that Constantine deemed it better to hold fellowship in the Catholic Church. By means of this law, almost all heresies, I believe, disappeared. So basically, Sozomen is telling us that when Constantine made people worship in one church and centralized the power of the church, he removed heresy, which is probably the best thing Constantine did. And one example of this is the Council of Nicaea. So he had this big council in which 318 bishops were brought together to decide matters of the church, and they came to the conclusion that Arianism needed to be debunked. And so that's what they did at this council, and the writings of Arius were burnt. So those are kind of how the ways that Constantine impacted the church. He made a syncretistic society. He instituted financial policies like tax exemption, and he stomped out heresy. So Constantine's impact was not black and white. It wasn't clear cut, like he was a good guy or he was a bad guy. He definitely had some positive things that came from his conversion and some not so great things. So yeah. Okay, that was probably the worst viva ever. This video is sponsored by kombucha, by the way. Thanks, kombucha Serenergy, for keeping me alive.